Hello everybody, this is Kirby over yonder, and we're finally here at Adventure Time Season 8. This is one of my favorite seasons of Adventure Time, so I was really excited to talk about it. This also happens to be our last full-length season of Adventure Time, with 27 episodes. For reference, Season 9 has 14 episodes, and Season 10 has 13 episodes, so those seasons are gonna be a little weird to talk about. Right off the bat, I think the biggest change that Season 8 makes is that the show now fully embraces serialization. Of course, serialization has always been a part of Adventure Time, but the crew never fully committed to it. Storylines would pop in and out somewhat infrequently, which isn't necessarily a bad form of storytelling, but it was starting to get a bit old. But in Season 8, almost every episode furthers some storyline in some way, shape, or form. And in my opinion, this change is just awesome. It finally feels like the show is really moving. This is a season that really rewards longtime fans of the show. This is partially because, much like with Season 7, Season 8 has tons of callbacks to earlier episodes. Nothing too gratuitous, of course, it's all done pretty tastefully. But also because we get tons of cool lore reveals this season. We see the inside of the Ice Crown, we get some backstory for Lady Rainicorn, we learn about the Elementals, we learn about Musical, we learn about Dr. Gross and her animal hybrids, we see what the inside of the Fin Sword looks like, as well as the Grass Curse. We learn about Tree Trunk's alien husband. And then we get Islands, which is basically just one big 8-episode info dump, and I'll talk more about it later. I don't know about you guys, but I think it's pretty awesome that even 8 seasons in, we're still uncovering new aspects of the world and these characters. I think it just goes to show how well crafted this world is, how there's always some new mystery to solve. However, you can also feel the show sort of beginning to wrap up at this point, since we get a lot of conclusions to character arcs as well as character send-off episodes. Lady Rainicorn of the Crystal Dimension is a send-off episode for Lady Rainicorn. Bun Bun concludes the Fin and Flame Princess arc, as well as giving us a send-off to the Flame King and Cinnamon Bun. Normal Man gives us a send-off to Magic Man, Glob, and Tiny Manicore. Daddy Daughter Card Wars and Wheels are our last episodes about Jake and one of his kids, or, in the latter's case, one of his grandkids. Tiffany got somewhat of a conclusion to his arc in Preboot. High Strangeness sends off the rivalry between Tree Trunks and Princess Bubblegum. Horse and Ball is a send-off to James Baxter. And Islands gives us a conclusion to Susan's arc and answers questions about Finn's mom and the humans. Basically, Season 8 acts as sort of the beginning of the end for Adventure Time. It's the season that transitions us into the series' endgame, and it does a pretty great job at it too. But as great as all this continuity and world-building stuff is, there's one very important aspect of Season 8 that can't be overlooked. It's just really wholesome. With only a couple exceptions, most of our main characters here are basically cool with each other. They've all arced out, so to speak. But for real, it's great to see all the characters on good terms with each other. It really just shows how much they've all matured over the years. Seeing these characters develop into better versions of themselves is one of my favorite aspects of Adventure Time. Alright, we've glossed over it long enough. It's time to discuss the second of 3 miniseries, that being Islands. Islands is awesome, I love this miniseries. I love the sense of adventure to the Islands miniseries. This is really our first time seeing any character leave Ooo, and it feels big. The show does a great job making this feel like an event. It's fun seeing the characters explore all these different islands. They do a great job building up the mystery of what happened to the humans. This has been one of the series' biggest mysteries ever since Season 2. So it's satisfying to finally get a solid answer to that. It also gives us answers as to who Finn's mom is, why Martin abandoned Finn, along with the origins of Susan. All these cool lore reveals made Islands really exciting to watch the first time. But at the same time, it never really loses its sense of fun and adventure. It always feels like something exciting is happening, which makes these episodes very rewatchable. I really appreciate Finn's arc in Islands. They do a good job establishing how much this trip means to Finn from the start. How important it is that he gets answers to these questions. I love just the state of shock Finn's in when he first learns he's gonna meet his mom. It feels so real how he just sort of sits with that feeling for a while. Like, yeah, this is probably how I'd react to hearing this information too. And I love the subversion here too, that when Finn is actually confronted with who his mother is, he's not really sure what to think. The main conflict of Islands isn't defeating some sort of big enemy, it's just about Finn trying to get his mom to understand him. Islands as a miniseries is a lot more relaxed than Stakes and Elements, so this sort of personal conflict works for it a lot. And yeah, this ending is just absolutely heart-wrenching, I love it. You really get the feeling that Finn's changed through this adventure, that he's much more at peace with himself and his identity. I also appreciate the character work done here for Susan. Aside from Preboot and Reboot earlier this season, Susan as a character hasn't really been relevant since Season 3's Buteopia. Like, sure, she got a major role back in Season 6's Dark Purple, but that episode didn't really add anything to her story or character. But with Islands, we finally start getting some answers as to who Susan is. Here we finally get a full-on backstory for her, explaining what her role on the island was before losing her memory. Having her regain her memories and try to reconcile for her mistakes is a great way to send off her character. It's interesting seeing how Frida changed from someone who wanted to leave the island and explore, to someone who's completely jaded and lost all the passion she once had. I really do hope we get to see more of them someday, as I think there's a lot of story potential there, but as of now, I'm still happy with their arc. Oh, and also let them be gay, please, thank you. If I were to have any complaints with Islands, I think we could have spent a little more time on the conflict between Finn and Minerva. Don't get me wrong, what we get is still really good, it just feels a little too quick. Of the three miniseries, Islands is probably the one that could have benefited the most from being just an episode or two longer, since it was trying to do so many different things. But again, what we do get still works, so it's not like this completely just dampens the whole miniseries or anything. Overall, Islands is awesome. It's fun, it's exciting, it gives us some interesting lore, it answers questions, it has great character work for Finn and Susan, and it has some really strong heartfelt moments. I think it's a solid improvement over Stakes, which was still really great, but a little tonally inconsistent and didn't really have the most satisfying ending. Whereas Islands is consistently strong from beginning to end, although the best miniseries is still yet to come. I already discussed Finn a fair amount while talking about Islands, however I still have more to say about him, as this might be his best season in the entire show. Seriously, this season gives us some really strong character work for the guy. We get some solid moments of character growth for Finn, like working through his insecurities and Don't Look, actually apologizing to Flame Princess and Bun Bun, and working through his depression in the musical. All this focus put on Finn's personal growth makes it really feel like he's maturing this season. He's come a long way since the beginning of the show. And this growth is symbolized through him once again losing his arm, but this time having it replaced with a robot arm. This was a great decision in my opinion. I've discussed this before, but I've never been a fan of Finn getting his arm back so quickly and breezy. It always felt like a cop-out to me. So even though it's a little weird that Finn ended up losing his arm twice, I'm still really glad they revisited this concept. Finn losing his arm always seemed like an inevitability, so this time I'm glad he lost it permanently. Oh, and we've also got to discuss Fern. He is an alternate version of Finn, so technically that means we can talk about him here. In my opinion, Fern was a great addition to the show. I'm a big fan of him. I'm a big fan of seeing alternate versions of characters we already know, so this concept just inherently appeals to me. And it's awesome seeing him come to terms with his identity and who he is in relation to the OG Finn. Plus, I'm a big fan of his character design, it's so cool. Although my big criticism when it comes to Fern is that I feel like he could have been integrated into the main cast better. Like, before his turning point in 3 Buckets, the only episode he has a role in that isn't about him is The Invitation. And no, I'm not counting him being candified in Element. I just think this would have done a better job building up to his betrayal of Finn at the end of next season. But even still, I think Fern is an awesome character, and he's one of my favorite things to come out of the later seasons of Adventure Time. Jake had a pretty solid Season 8. He gets a lot of good comedic relief moments this year. Considering how Finn-centric this season is, Jake mostly acts in support of Finn this season, but that's not a bad thing, as Finn and Jake's brotherly bond is one of my favorite aspects of the show. Plus, we do get the episodes Daddy-Daughter Card Wars and Wheels, the last 2 episodes focusing on his relationship with one of his kids. the former of which involving him reconciling with his younger self. So yeah, I'd say this is a pretty good year for him. Season 8 featured a big development for Peebles in the form of her gaining her elemental abilities. Her powers only come into play for 2 episodes this season, however they'll have big consequences for the Elements miniseries in that season. We also see her begin to turn a new leaf with Ice King and Broke His Crown, and with Tree Trunks and High Strangeness, showing how much she's changed as a person in the past couple seasons. And aside from that, much like with Jake, she played a big supporting role to Finn this season, helping him get back to normal and Don't Look, helping him through his depression in the musical, replacing his arm in 2 swords, and seeing him off in The Invitation. So yeah, this was a pretty solid year for PB. She got a lot to do this season. I feel like it would have been easy to have PB sort of stagnate as a character now that she's gone through her redemption arc, but thankfully that didn't happen. Season 8 is a surprisingly great season for the Ice King. He only gets 2 major roles like in the last 2 seasons, however this season makes up for that by having him appear much more frequently in smaller roles. He gets turned into Simon by Finn's magic eyes and Don't Look, which is just adorable. He appears as Princess Purple Patch in Beyond the Grotto, as well as just his regular self at the end of the episode. He gets to be the narrator in 5 Short Tables. He gets to sing his awkward song in the musical, and gets treated by Finn in Do No Harm. In Elemental, Jake describes Ice King as semi-reformed, and yeah, that's like the perfect descriptor for him. He's still an unhinged old man, but much closer to Abe Simpson than Mr. Burns. He's pretty much just become the show's wacky comic relief character, which is a role that honestly suits him. After Season 7 being easily her biggest season of the show, Season 8 is honestly a pretty weak season for Marceline. She only gets 1 major role this season, and only a couple of minor roles throughout. But hey, she gets to cover a Mitski song, that's something I guess. Likewise, considering how much attention the little guy got in Season 7, Season 8 is a bit of a step down for BMO, but not a bad season for him at all. I mean, he does get to join Finn, Jake, and Susan in Islands, meaning he gets quite a bit of screen time in this group of episodes. And he does become absolutely swole in imaginary resources. But otherwise, she mostly just gets cute smaller moments throughout the season, which I'm fine with. I'm not the biggest fan of most BMO-centric episodes, so this approach is perfectly fine by me. Back in my Season 3 retrospective, I mentioned that 3 and 8 were tied for my favorite seasons of the show. And after rewatching Season 8 and thinking about it for a while, I decided that my favorite season is still Season 3. Season 3 just has way too many classic episodes to pass up, not to mention the nostalgic attachment I have towards this season in particular. But still, considering the fact that Adventure Time is my favorite show, Season 8 only being my second favorite season is not a bad place for it to be at all. Season 8 just added so much interesting lore and world building, while also strengthening the characters and their bonds to each other. And there are a ton of episodes this season that I just rewatch all the time, so this top 10 list is gonna be one of the harder ones. So with that, let me know how you feel about Adventure Time Season 8 in the comments. Kirby, out.